Good morning. This is the time and place for the hearing officer hearing of September 30th, 2015. My name is Roger Kiesel, and I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. We have two cases today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. There are two cases at the same address, 411 North Brand Boulevard and 121 West Lexington. One of the cases is a parking use permit. The other is a conditional use permit. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if four required findings are present. And under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.51, a parking use permit shall be granted if the 9 required findings are present. The findings. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria of the findings, then the planning hearing officer can either approve or approve with conditions the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted at the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. We also notice occupants within 500 feet. The hearing will proceed as follows. I'll read a description of the application request. I'll read the reports received from other departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will then make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward to speak, stating both their name and address, and will be asked to present a case within a 15-minute time period. Others in support or in opposition to the application and other interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again, both stating their name and address within a 3-minute limit. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimony given at the preceding speaker with a 5-minute limit. The hearing will then be closed and taken under submission or a decision rendered. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 3062 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Building and Safety Section Permit Services Center, located on the same floor of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of these speakers' forms, which have been provided to you by the front door, and submit it to staff. All right, that takes care of the introduction. As I said before, we have two cases at one address. The address is 411 North Brand / 121 West Lexington. The cases are parking use permit case number 1510037 and conditional use permit case number 1510035. The applicant is Con Consulting. This is an application for a parking use permit and a conditional use permit to allow a new private specialized educational training school on a secondary frontage street with 43 off-site parking spaces in the DSP Gateway District. As I mentioned before, located at 411 North Brand Boulevard / 121 West Lexington. Brad Collin is the case planner. Let's turn it over to him for a brief overview.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. As mentioned, we have a conditional use permit, case number 1510035, and that's for the tenant space or property at 411 North Brand. The parking use permit is approximately 121 or addressed as 121 West Lexington, which is case number PPUP 1510037. The conditional use permit, which is for an acting school with live audiences. The acting school is considered a private specialized education and training business. The reason the conditional use permit is required is because this use is located within a secondary frontage within the downtown specific plan, and therefore the use requires a conditional use permit in order to get input or conditions placed on it to make the business more compatible with the surrounding area by the addition of conditions placed on the subject application. The application for the parking use permit is required because the required parking is located off-site, which is across the alley from the subject business, approximately 50 feet away. The applicant of both the 411 North Brand building as well as where the parking structure is located is the same as of now. Staff believes that the conditions for the conditional use permit as well as the parking reduction permit can be made, and conditions are attached for your review. Staff has not received any comments from the public, either by phone or email or written form, and no comments were received from any of the departments that the application was sent around to for their input. It concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. And we're recommending approval for both applications.
Okay. One quick question, because I want to make sure I'm clear, and maybe I wasn't in my introduction. There are two addresses. They're really two properties, two different properties.
That's correct.
They're owned by the same person at this point, and maybe this is a question better directed to the applicant. Is this more like a campus setting?
That's my understanding.
Okay. All right.
And also, just a quick clarification, based off of staff's calculation, 54 parking spaces are required.
Okay.
And the parking structure that's being proposed for these spaces currently has 281 parking spaces. And staff is showing that there's, where did it go? There's about 98 parking spaces that are available in the structure that are above and beyond code requirements.
Okay. Where is that? Where, okay, under the analysis of the parking use permit, that's where you go over. Okay, so 54 parking spaces are required.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I've got one speaker card, Rodney V. Kahn.
Good morning, Mr. Kiesel and city staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 403 here in the city of Glendale. To start off by answering your question, the HPC Acting School is part of the Hollywood Production Center campus. And this campus incorporates a large majority of the city block. To the southeast, we have the Glendale Federal Building on the corner of Brand and Lexington. West of that is referred to as the Glendale Annex, which is on the corner of Orange and Lexington. Directly north of that is the subject parking structure that we're referencing in the parking use permit. Also, as part of this campus is the 411 North Brand and the 413 North Brand properties.
So it's kind of like this.
Yes, that's correct.
Campus.
That's correct. So just the 3 parcels to the northeast on the city block are not part. The rest of the campus is the rest of the block. The acting school, as was pointed out by Mr. Collin, will occupy approximately 934 square feet. And if you reference the floor plan that's hanging there, it will show that the front 25 feet of the first floor of the 411 North Brand property is where this acting school is being proposed. The remainder of that building will be for engineering rooms, restrooms, storage rooms, and a production studio. And the production studio also has live audiences. So the acting school will have live audiences, and the production studio will have live audiences. The production studio is already there and is allowed by right. Our property is located.
I'm sorry, Rodney.
Sure, go
So this is already there.
The use is allowed, yes. The
Right.
production use is allowed. That's correct.
Okay.
The property in question is in the downtown specific plan, as pointed out, the Gateway District. And the property is also classified, as was pointed out, and the reason we're here with this conditional use permit, as a secondary frontage street, which requires that the first 25 feet of lot depth of the ground floor incorporate specific land uses. And there are only certain land uses that are allowed in this area, in this front 25 feet, an acting school being one of them. The downtown specific plan encourages a variety of economic activities to support a diverse downtown, which makes sense. The entertainment complex this is part of, because Hollywood Production Center is general offices, but it's oriented also towards entertainment. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of uses that serve this area. So this production studio with live audiences and this acting school with live audiences will fit in nicely with that whole theme or entertainment theme in this area. Along Brand Boulevard, part of this concept, or the reason that the city, I believe, is requiring this 25 feet, is to try to activate the street, to try to get some pedestrian activity, to try to get people looking in and seeing some energy or some life. And that's very much what this acting school will provide. As it relates to the other elements of the general plan, including the open space, recreation, housing, circulation, and noise elements, they will not be impacted as a result of this project. The second finding, as it relates to what we are proposing here today, the HPC acting school will complement the adjacent land uses in the area. The hours of operation, for your knowledge, it will be 7 days a week. And we are proposing at this time from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It does not mean that we will have acting classes going on all the time, every day during that time period, but it will be within those time limitations and within that 7 days a week. And I think that's a good thing from a city perspective, because you would want to encourage that activity as much as you could. The use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses. The adjacent land uses consist of the HPC entertainment offices, which I already spoke about. We also have a theater, Stars Theater, that's directly north of the 413 property. There's a bank, Bank of America, which is further south along the boulevard. And we also have just quite a variety of different, there's restaurant-type uses and other commercial activities. So the ownership of the business is also the ownership of the building. And the ownership of this building owns other buildings on this campus. So they have very much a vested interest in making sure that this use operates in a very compatible manner to their other buildings, their other uses, and also to the adjacent businesses.
So the owner of this business, the acting school, also owns the building, the site.
That's correct. That's correct. Last item as it relates to the conditional use permit about adequate public and private facilities such as utilities, landscaping, parking, and traffic circulation measures are provided for. I'll save the parking part of it for the next application, but as it relates to the landscaping, the utilities, etc., Glendale Water and Power continues to have the capacity to provide water and electrical services consistent with this need being generated by this business. Sewer capacity in the area is sufficient to handle the demand created. Other utilities such as gas, phone, and cable, they're already available at the site. As it relates to the parking, and I'll kind of shift gears here and go to the parking use permit. First of all, Mr. Collin accurately talked about the parking structure itself. So right now, for this parking structure, there are 281 parking spaces total. There is 143 surplus parking spaces, meaning they are non-code required parking spaces in addition to what the code requires for this campus. So that would leave us, in terms of applying the 54 parking spaces to the 143 surplus, we would still have 98 extra spaces over and above what the code requires, taking into account this new use as well.
Okay.
As it relates to the parking use permit, and there are some specific items I need to identify. First of all, the off-site parking is a permitted use in this zone. The off-site parking spaces are actually in a very, very short distance from this property and from this use. We're across a alley, and the alley is a fairly narrow alley. I think it's right now about 15 feet in width. The entrance and exit to the parking structure and to the garage is right next to where this business is being located. So it's not as if it's on the north side of Milford or anything like that. So we're within a 50-foot distance. It's very, very close proximity in terms of access and ease coming and going to the parking. I already mentioned about the hours of operation. There would be no impact. In fact, I was out there about this time yesterday, just kind of walking the parking structure to see how many spaces were occupied. There's 3 levels. I went up to the 3rd level. It was completely, there were no cars there yet at all. I went to the 2nd level. It was about half occupied, and I went to the 1st level, and it was pretty much occupied. So there's quite a bit of parking that's available right now. Access to the parking, it says how access to the site is adequate to accommodate the proposed off-site parking facilities. You can enter the parking structure itself off of Orange. You can exit off of Orange. You could also exit off of Milford Street. It's all existing. The parking meets code. The circulation patterns all make sense. The final few items that I'd like to just touch on real briefly as it relates to the parking. This additional parking that we're incorporating and that's being used is over and above what's required. I think in terms of being able to sustain this use, I think this is an excellent location for something like this, an acting school to kind of activate that street. I walk up and down Brand Boulevard quite a bit, just trying to get some exercise from my office and whatnot. Anything in this kind of mid-Brand area of the city needs activation. And so I think this is a very good beginning, if you will, for this area to have this use come in this location. Anyway, I'll conclude my remarks. If you have questions or further questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Just a quick question for Mr. Collin. No comments received from other departments, but also no comments from any of the public notified?
That's correct. And if I may, staff is aware of another project that has recently been approved.
Yeah,
that's part of another maybe question I had.
Sure.
Your for the proposed use here, you're going to use parking that's in the garage up here. What happens if this goes away?
Well, I'll answer a couple different questions, because there was a question that Mr. Cullen asked me that I think is referenced and should be referenced as well. First of all, as we mentioned earlier, the business, the buildings, the parking is all owned by the same entity. Mm-hmm. So right now it's very simple and very easy. Mm-hmm. If that parking structure was to go away, we would then have to provide the 54 parking spaces for this use to do that. But the reality of the situation is if that parking structure was to go away, the project that we have approved incorporates the properties along Brand Boulevard as well. So what ends up happening is you have this mixed-use project that has properties along Brand Boulevard that has commercial and residential frontage, and then it steps back as you go further back where the parking structure was. We still have plans. Those documents, or that project is looking at construction documents. But as we've learned back in 2008, as we've learned back in other projects, even though a project is approved and is moving forward, it doesn't mean it will get built, doesn't mean it will get financed. And what we would like to do is activate Brand Boulevard now and not wait for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. That may or may not happen.
Okay. So the project that may occur where the parking lot is takes into account parking requirements of, in this case, 411.
It could.
Okay.
It could. But more to the point, if that building was built where that parking structure is, the Brand Boulevard properties would probably go as well, because it's part of the overall project.
What do you mean go as well?
Well, the 411 and the 413 were part of the project that we had approved, where the parking structure is as well.
Okay.
We have frontage along Brand.
Oh, got it.
The building itself steps back.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't quite understand that then.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the acting school and the production studio, is it one business?
Well, no, it's not one business, but it's in one area. Mm-hmm. So what we are hoping and thinking is that you'd have the production studio that would be operating on its own. You have different productions that come in. You may have them using the acting school area to rehearse or to take classes or do different things like that. But they're operating separately in that same area. So, if that makes sense.
Okay. But they could be cooperating with each other?
Yeah, they very much could be cooperating with each other. To be quite frank, what would be ideal is if you did have a production there that would rehearse, that would use that front area for the acting school so that it meets the criteria and activates the street. Then they film it with the live audiences being able to do it, on top of which it would be nice if they also rented office space in the different offices that were part of the thing, part of the Hollywood Production Center. So ideally, yes, it would all kind of flow together, but we can't count on that. So.
Okay. I think that was all the questions I had.
Okay.
Anybody else want to speak on the project? I only have one speaker card.
No.
Okay.
Also, Mr. Kiesel, we reviewed the conditions of approval for both applications, and we're fine and comfortable with them as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks. All right. If no one else wants to speak, I will close the public hearing. Thank you all for coming, and the meeting of September 30th, 2015 is complete. It's 10:12. Thanks.